A lot of Muslims say that it's the true religion because if you were to take all the Qurans and throw them in the garbage or in the ocean, the Quran could be brought back because it's memorized.
Really?
So what if somebody destroyed all the Bibles? How can you bring it back? Did anybody memorize the Bible?
Then how do you explain the fact that you have at least 38 different Arabic versions of the Quran? And even in Islamic tradition, you have 7 qiraat of the Uthmanic Mus'haf, and those 7 came down through 2 chains for a total of 14 qiraat plus 3 others for good measure that was chosen by Mujahid centuries later. So then which of those Arabic versions is the actual original version that Uthman codified? And if memorization preserved the Quran, then explain to me why in Sahih Bukhari, volume 6, number 510, Uthman ibn Affan ordered the Arabic Qurans, the copies of the Quran written in Arabic by Muhammad's companions such as Abdullah ibn Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b, be gathered and burned and destroyed because those Arabic Qurans, they disagreed so much with one another. Some Qurans had verses that the other Qurans didn't have if memorization was able to preserve it. Didn't Abdullah ibn Masud memorize the Quran? Didn't Ubay ibn Ka'b memorize the Quran? If so, why is it when they wrote down the Quran, their Qurans contradicted each other and didn't completely agree?
I don't know about that.
The Muslim lady starts with a common argument that Muslims use to defend the Quran's authenticity, the claim that its preservation is unparalleled because of how many people have memorized it. The idea is that even if all the physical copies of the Quran were destroyed, the Quran could be reconstructed through memorization alone. In my opinion, this claim is powerful on the surface. After all, a religion where the holy book is memorized by millions of people worldwide does suggest an impressive level of preservation. But what follows here is a deep dive into the historical complexities of Quranic preservation. However, the speaker then challenges this argument by pointing out a significant historical issue: why were certain early Qurans burned and destroyed by Caliph Uthman if memorization could keep the text intact? Why were there discrepancies between the early versions of the Quran written by Muhammad's companions, like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and Ubay ibn Ka'b? This raises a fundamental question: if the Quran was so perfectly preserved through memorization, why would Uthman have felt the need to standardize the Quran and burn variant copies? The debate here touches on the tension between oral tradition and written texts in the early Islamic community.
A lot of Muslims say that it's the true religion because if you were to take all the Qurans and throw them in the garbage or in the ocean, the Quran could be brought back because it's memorized.
Really?
So what if somebody destroyed all the Bibles? How can you bring it back? Did anybody memorize the Bible?
Then how do you explain the fact that you have at least 38 different Arabic versions of the Quran? And even in Islamic tradition, you have 7 qiraat of the Uthmanic Mus'haf, and those 7 came down through 2 chains for a total of 14 qiraat plus 3 others for good measure that was chosen by Mujahid centuries later. So then which of those Arabic versions is the actual original version that Uthman codified? And if memorization preserved the Quran, then explain to me why in Sahih Bukhari, volume 6, number 510, Uthman ibn Affan ordered the Arabic Qurans, the copies of the Quran written in Arabic by Muhammad's companions such as Abdullah ibn Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b, be gathered and burned and destroyed because those Arabic Qurans, they disagreed so much with one another. Some Qurans had verses that the other Qurans didn't have if memorization was able to preserve it. Didn't Abdullah ibn Masud memorize the Quran? Didn't Ubay ibn Ka'b memorize the Quran? If so, why is it when they wrote down the Quran, their Qurans contradicted each other and didn't completely agree?
I don't know about that. I just know that.
Yeah, of course you're not going to know. They're not going to tell you. Exactly. They're not going to tell you. And as far as the Bible's concerned, let me tell you why the Bible can't be destroyed. When the Bible books written, they were immediately copied and sent to different centers all over the world. So if I wrote a book, the people made copies of it and spread it to other parts of the world. So from early on, the books of the Bible were mass copied and sent all over the world at a time in which you didn't have internet, you didn't have email, you didn't have UPS. So you'd make a copy, and by the time, let's say you're in Israel and you go to Rome, it'll take you weeks, if not months, to get there. And there you give the copy to the church there and they start copying it. So what happens is the Bible is mass copied, which is why today, right now, we still have in our possession in museums all over the world nearly 25,000 copies of the books of the Bible in different languages. As far as the New Testament written in Greek, we have about 5,300 copies in Greek. And then we have about 10,000 copies of the biblical books in Latin. And then we have thousands of others in Aramaic, Syriac, Sahidic Coptic, Armenian, and that's what has survived. So imagine throughout the centuries, mass copying of the Bible, different parts of the world, they have their copies that they're copying and recopying and recopying. So at what point in time could the Bible ever be lost?
It also says that about the Quran, that it's actually, they say the Quran is one of the miracles that it's been preserved.
I just told you that the Arabic Qurans are not identical. They have thousands of differences in the Arabic alone. Uthman destroyed the copies of Muhammad's companion Sahaba. You know Abdullah bin Masud, right? He's a Sahabi?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now, why did Uthman destroy the Arabic Mus'haf of Abdullah bin Masud when Sahih Bukhari? Muhammad said, learn the Quran from 4. And he mentioned Abdullah bin Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b as 2. Abdullah bin Masud and Ubay ibn Ka'b, their Qurans disagreed. One had verses the other didn't have, and one had more surahs than the other. And Uthman destroyed both their copies, and he standardized the one produced by Zayd. Who gave Uthman that right? Why did they destroy their copies? And why did their copies disagree when they memorized the Quran from Muhammad? Why didn't their memorization agree?
I don't know about that, honestly.
Yeah, I know you don't know because the Muslims aren't not telling you. They're deceiving you. The Quran doesn't say Allah will preserve the Quran. I'll tell you what it says. Chapter 15, verse 9. It says, we sent down the reminder and we will guard it. Now, the Muslims will tell you that the reminder means the Quran. No, if you read the Quran, it's not just the Quran. The dhikr refers to all the books that Allah sent down through His messengers, that He'll preserve all of them. Because the Quran calls the Bible reminder.
Okay.
So do you believe the Quran, that Allah preserved the dhikr, the reminder?
I believe the Quran was preserved.
No, let me repeat my question, young sister. Do you believe the Quran when it says Allah will preserve dhikr? That's chapter 15, verse 9, meaning the reminder in English, reminder or remembrance. Do you believe Allah preserved the dhikr?
Okay, so I don't want to say anything.
Okay, well read it, because the dhikr in the Quran is not just the Quran, it's all of the scriptures, even the Bible.
And about the Orthodox Christianity, they have a lot of pictures in the church,
Sure.
Lots of statues and things like that, but I thought that was against Christianity because it says in the Ten Commandments not to make
Ten Commandments doesn't say. No, it doesn't say no pictures. Ten Commandments says you don't make pictures of things that you worship as gods and goddesses. There's a difference. It's a difference between having an image of a god or a goddess that you worship and having an image, because the same God fashioned images. But beyond that, in Islam stands condemned, because in Leviticus 26:1 it says you're not going to take any figured stones and venerate them. So why does your prophet make it sunnah? And why did he kiss a black stone, smother a black stone, and touch a black stone, and made it sunnah for you when you go to Hajj or Umrah, that if you can, you must touch and kiss the black stone?
Well, I don't know much about Hajj or Umrah.
But that isn't Hajj. Don't take my word for it. Ask the Muslim. When you perform Hajj or Umrah, one of the rites of Hajj, not only do you run between Safa and Marwa 7 times, and run around the Kaaba 7 times, and throw stones at Wadi Mina. If you're able, because of the crowds, you may not be able, you must touch the black stone and kiss it. And there is a hadith in Bukhari where Umar ibn al-Khattab said, when he's about to kiss it, he goes, indeed, you are stone, and I know that you can neither harm nor benefit me. Had I not seen the Messenger of Allah kiss you, I would not have kissed you. So he didn't understand the logic of it. So according to the Sharia of Musa, Muhammad stands condemned. And if you do that, you stand condemned. Because that is a stone that has no significance. It was a stone venerated by the pagans that Muhammad took over. But coming back to your question, the Bible doesn't say you can't have images. It says you can't have images of things that you worship as gods and goddesses. And I can show you in the Bible where God Himself said, make an image that you don't worship as a god or goddess, but an image nonetheless. That's in the Bible.
But why didn't some Orthodox, like those hymns and stuff, they say like Mary, Mother of God, and they kind of like praise her?
Well, I mean, think about it. If Jesus is God in her womb, He didn't stop being God. In one sense, she's the mother of God, in that the baby that's forming in her womb, taking a physical body, is still God in her womb. So technically, even though you don't believe it, I'm not saying believe it, but technically, if Jesus was God in her womb, technically, isn't that the mother of God?
If you put it that way, yeah.
Okay, that's the thing. So the debate is, do you accept that Jesus is God who became a human baby and He took a human nature from the blessed womb of His mother? Well, you reject that. But let's say you believed it. Jesus is the eternal word of the Father. And that eternal word entered the womb of Mary and resided in her womb, taking a physical body, human nature, by the power of God, to become a human baby. But in that womb, he's still the Word, he's still divine, he's still God. So technically, she'd be the mother of God, right?
Like I said, if you put it that way, yes, but I'm not going to.
No, that's okay. I'm not saying believe it, but now you get the logic. So that's why Christians say what they say. They're not saying Mary gave God his life, or Mary gave God his divine nature, or Mary gave birth to a divine person who didn't exist. They're saying that Mary gave to Jesus a physical body, a human nature that he took from her womb, but that Jesus is the eternal Word. He's a divine person that existed before Mary and chose Mary to be his mother. But anyway, what's your next question? Go ahead.
Okay, about deceiving. I actually watch a lot of debates with you and David Wood and others, and they mention a lot about Muslims using taqiyya, like mostly towards converts, like deceiving them about the religion, saying
just like they deceived you about the Quran.
Like just about the religion in general, like a lot of converts, they come from many of them come from troubled past, and they've been through a lot, and then they say, look, in Islam, the divorced woman, she gets, if you marry a divorcee, you get high status. Really? And the Prophet, he married the widow, he helped all the women, and then when they actually become a Muslim, they know that actually just because of their past, they're treated very badly. So I'm just wondering why would a Muslim have to trick people to convert to the religion but if you ask a Muslim what is taqiyya, they say no, it's only if somebody's going to kill you and you say I'm not a Muslim just to not to be killed. It's not to deceive people. So how come Christians, they say that that's taqiyya, people lying?
Well, yeah, because they're telling you that there's only one situation for taqiyya, to protect yourself. Well, they can say, well, this is a form of protection. We are not telling people what Islam truly teaches, lest they find out and get angry and persecute Muslims. For example, when's the last time you heard a Muslim come up in a stadium telling people, according to Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 24, married women are unlawful for Muslim men except those that their right hands possess, and what that means? Have you heard of that verse?
Captive of war.
Okay,
right?
So now if a Muslim attacks my place, he attacks my place right now, and I'm married and I have my daughters. According to that verse, they can take my wife and sleep with her and even sleep with my daughters. They don't need my permission or her. Now, how many non-Muslims are going to be happy with that? That if the Muslims do have the upper hand and they attack, they have that freedom.
You see, when somebody starts asking questions like this, even in Islam, they say it's you shouldn't be
fear
questioning.
Tactics, exactly. Fear tactics. And the reason why is because Muhammad condemned people asking too much questions, because it's in Surah Al-Ma'idah 5, 101, 102. He tells them, do not ask questions, because people before you asked and they lost their faith.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay, so what kind of religion is this that's afraid of you to know the truth and then intimidates you not to ask questions because you lose your faith and then threatens to kill you?
The shaitan can come and play with your mind and make you think things.
Okay, hold on. But I didn't quote shaitan. I quoted the Quran. The Quran says a Muslim man can take my married wife if he attacks my place and takes me captive and sleep with her. So how's that shaitan? That's Allah and the Quran.
No, I said shaitan comes and tries to misguide people by putting thoughts in their head. If you were to ask a question what's the purpose, or who created Allah?
Is that shaitan putting in my head, asking, what in the world is this religion that would allow them to sleep with my wife if they took me captive? That's shaitan telling me to be upset, or is that God?
I'm saying when you get these thoughts, Muslims say it's because of shaitan.
Yeah, I know they say that. But why is it shaitan when this is something from shaitan? Only the devil would give someone the authority to attack a person, take his wife captive and sleep with her, even though I'm still alive and she's still my wife. That is the devil. It's God who would put these thoughts in my mind to start questioning, not the devil.
Now, the discussion shifts to taqiyya, a concept in Islamic tradition that permits deception under certain circumstances, particularly for self-preservation. The Muslim lady questions why Muslims would need to hide certain aspects of their faith when converting others, and specifically why some converts feel misled about the true nature of Islamic practices. Sam Shamoun explained taqiyya is often misunderstood in the West as lying or deceiving. In truth, it refers to concealing one's faith under threat of persecution or harm. The speaker's point, however, is that some converts feel tricked by what they are told about Islam, only to discover practices they didn't expect after conversion. Here, the speaker raises a moral dilemma: why would any religion need to engage in deception, even if it is for the sake of protection or conversion? And if taqiyya is used in some cases, does that make it morally acceptable, or does it undermine trust in the religion? This question ties into the broader issue of religious integrity. If some aspects of faith are hidden or misrepresented, it opens a question about the transparency and honesty of the religion itself. And if Muslims are being deceived in their conversions, what does that say about the ethical framework of the faith?